All right. So, hello and welcome to the 2026 State Routes to School How to Apply for a Mini Grant Training. This webinar has been made possible by Federal Transportation Alternatives Programs funds administered by the Michigan Department of Transportation in collaboration with the Michigan Fitness Foundation. Today, we'll be discussing how to apply for a Safe Routes to School mini grant for the upcoming 2026 to 2027 school year. So first, before I get into mini grant specifics, I'll introduce our two Safe Routes to School grant programs, as well as some key differences. So for anyone new to Safe Routes to School, we do have two grant programs. And Safe Routes to School is a federal program to make it safe, convenient, and fun for all children to bike, walk, and roll to school. You may have students who are walking, biking, or rolling to school already, perhaps in unsafe ways, or you might want to encourage students to engage in active transportation to and from school who are not already doing so. So, on to the differences. Mini grants, which we'll be talking about today, focus on the non-infrastructure programming and activity components of Safe Routes to School with awards of $15,000 per school or $120,000 per district. We have a single request for proposal call for mini grants announced at the beginning of each year, which is currently open at this time. Eligible applicants to be the fiduciary of these funds include municipalities, nonprofits, schools, and other agencies or institutions. And this grant is intended to cover programming, activities, and items that support safe walking, biking, and rolling to school for students. I do want to note that this grant cannot support busing or vehicle transportation programs. On the other hand, major grants look at both non-infrastructure and infrastructure, with a typical award size of $300,000 per school for infrastructure and an additional $15,000 per school for non-infrastructure, which is the same amount as the mini grant. The major grant applications are accepted through 3 grant cycles throughout the year, and the key applicant for major grant funds are Act 51 agencies or your local road authority for the infrastructure dollars, and they work in partnership with whoever will be the non-infrastructure fiduciary. And if you are interested in learning more about the major grant, we'll have a contact slide at the end of the presentation, and you can get in touch with your regional grant coordinator based on the information in that slide. However, in this training, we'll be talking about the mini grant. So we will touch on the grant basics, examples of eligible activities, our grant timeline, and I'll show you a little bit how to navigate our website to submit your proposal. So the ABCs, and this is really just going over in detail some of the things that I shared at the beginning slide here. So this upcoming grant is for the 2026 through 2027 school year. So it is a 1-year contract with an option to renew if your programming is incomplete or if you have not spent all of your funds down. We work with any school in the state of Michigan, so private, public, charter, special needs schools are all eligible. If you're unsure if your school qualifies, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will also be at the end of the presentation. And we work in all kinds of contexts, whether they be urban, rural, or suburban. The only stipulation is that the schools do need to have at least 1 grade in the K through 12 grade range. I do want to note though, because I did say special education schools are eligible, if you do know of or if you're part of a special education school with grades above the K through 12 range, please get in touch and we will talk about your eligibility options. As I said, the award is up to $15,000 per school or $120,000 per applicant with 8 or more schools. We just cap it there for manageability. And something important I do want to know for eligibility, so if you're a note taker, please note this down, is that we do want to see a 50-50 split in your budget between personnel and non-personnel. So this example on the slide here is if you were applying for one school for the full $15,000 range, we would want to see 75, sorry, I always get messed up with these numbers, 7,500 in personnel and 7,500 in non-personnel. So if you're not with a school, you are still in the
And are
right
you
place.
hearing me? Oh,
Oh, yes. Did you
I'm
have?
sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to ask a question about that distinction, personnel, non-personnel? Can you give us an example? I guess I'm not understanding what that means.
Yeah. So personnel would just basically be staffing for the programs, and non-personnel would be any items that support the programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. All right. So let's see. So many applicants are eligible outside of schools, and eligible applicants or eligible fiduciaries for applicants include schools and school districts, of course, municipalities, anchor institutions, and for these we would consider universities, health departments, or hospital networks, as well as nonprofit 501(c)(3)s. And we have seen all these different types of applicants apply and be awarded funding. All right, so getting down into the nitty gritty of the programs. So this is a list of some examples of activities that we've funded in the past. Much of these are geared towards K through 8 programming. High schools only somewhat recently became eligible, but we will address high school activities on the next slide. Something that I want to highlight here is that all programs must include at least one regular active transportation component, which features a regularly occurring completed trip between home and school. So that means that each school in the application needs to have at least one program or activity that encompasses a trip to or from school that is an active trip, so walking, biking, or rolling. And it does need to be regularly occurring, so not just a one-time event. Not every activity needs to be centered around this, but there must be at least one per school to be eligible. And I'll talk a little bit more about that component of this as I go down the list here and just talk about some of the activities that we've seen. We're also willing to be flexible in specific instances. So if you are a rural location and your students live quite far from the school, a trip between a remote drop location and the school does count for this eligibility requirement. And we're also willing to talk with you about students with disabilities if trips between home and school are not possible for them. So what is a remote drop-off? Remote drop-offs provide opportunities for students to be driven in a car or bus part of the way to school and walk the other portion, often with an adult guide. They're also great ways to address unsafe or congested school pickup and drop-off situations. So that is an example of something that would complete that eligibility requirement. Remote drop-offs can also be combined with bike trains or walking school buses, and those are programs that involve children walking or biking to school along designated routes with designated meeting points, a timetable, and a regularly rotated schedule of trained volunteers or staff serving as bike train or walking school bus leaders. That would be a great example of an eligible regular active transportation component as well. Bike trains and walking school buses are also great additions to regular walking and biking days, which are just days when students are encouraged to walk, bike, or roll to school. Next are bike rodeos, and those are events to teach students safe biking skills. And we've also seen other instructional sessions to teach bike maintenance, safe pedestrian skills, and other topics as well if you're interested in instructional sessions. Bike clubs and walking groups are also great for older students who want to bike or walk together. As well as incentives, contests, and walking bingo are really great for all ages. And we can fund those to create more buy-in for students to participate in your programming. Educational assemblies are also another way to teach students about relevant active transportation topics. Now, as for high schools, some of the programming will be similar and some won't be. These are just some suggestions that we have, but we're also very open to innovative and new ideas for high schoolers. This is just what we've seen suggested. So, walking clubs, um, and different from elementary or middle schools, these versions of walking clubs might incorporate different student organization as well as leadership roles for students. Walking safety forums or student-led safety task forces. This is where students can take a more active leadership role to identify priorities at your campus that relate to safe and active transportation and maybe take some action in encouraging students to make those more safer or to walk or bike to school more often. Pop-up demonstrations are where you try out temporary infrastructure treatments, such as bike lanes, curb extensions, or pedestrian islands. You would need to talk with your road authority or municipality before implementing this, but this would be a great chance to include high school students in actually changing their environment around them. Social media or yard sign campaigns are ways that high school students can learn about and spread messages about active transportation. And then we see a few more clubs, so mechanics clubs, earn a bikes. This is where students can learn how to fix bikes as well as bike safety skills and work on refurbishing bikes that they can keep or donate. These bikes could end up in a bike library, which is a program where if you notice that many students in your school do not have access to bikes, you could provide bikes in a bike library that students could check out on a daily, weekly, monthly, or semester long basis. And then contests and incentives, they just work for all ages. And we can also shed light on the limits of flexibility and eligibility during our Q&A session. So now I'll talk about how we see grant expenses reimbursed. So talking about personnel or staffing, we suggest an hourly rate of at least $15. And if you are considering hiring existing school staff or existing police officer staff, you will also need to think about their outside of hours rate or overtime rate, as well as fringe. For every mini grant, we do require you to identify a program coordinator. And this is who will reach out to us when they have issues, and we'll reach out to them for follow-up, and we can help make them, or we can help them mobilize people and help make the program more successful. But aside from that required position, which can be paid or unpaid, but we do suggest paid, we also see corner captains. Importantly, we cannot reimburse crossing guard salaries, but we can reimburse corner captain salaries. And the difference is that corner captains direct student traffic and not vehicle traffic. We've also seen bike train or walking school bus leaders, so the people who are leading those routes and making sure that all of the kids are with them, as well as other paid volunteers or paid positions like club leaders, etc. So, as far as non-personnel expenses go, most often we've seen promotional flyers and marketing materials. Um, as well as incentive items to encourage students to participate in programming. There are limitations on these, and we do have a full list on our website, as well as I will send that in a follow-up email too. Essentially, the basic limitation is that your incentives do need to be items that support walking or biking to school. We can also, of course, fund items that support bike rodeos or clubs or other events, reflective safety gear for corner captains or walking school bus participants, and we can support crossing guards in the way of funding supplies and training for those crossing guards. So I'll give a little example of a successful program that we've seen. A case study is with South Haven. This was a program where it was actually the fiduciary was the Bronson Health Foundation, so a hospital system. And they also were concurrently working with a SNAP Ed program, also through the Michigan Fitness Foundation. And so they were able to connect their nutrition education and pedestrian education together underneath the Safe Kids Greater South Haven program. So the Health Foundation had pre-existing relationships with the schools. And so this was really crucial to the success of the program. And they also had existing relationships with the fire department, which they were able to bring them in to the programming as well. So their regular active transportation was they did regular themed walk to school day events. So the images that you see on the slide here were from their Chalk the Walk themed event, where they encouraged students to use chalk to express themselves on their way to school. And they also included a walking school bus, a bike rodeo, and other pedestrian safety education in their programming as well. Another example is Portland. So this is an example of a public school partnering with a Catholic school as well, so a public and private. And they actually applied for a major grant that included a non-infrastructure component. So the area is very bike friendly if anyone's familiar with Portland. And there is a lot of mountain biking programming that already exists. So their program focused a lot on bike safety education and in items to support biking. So they wanted to really bring a safety aspect to their biking and increase bike storage capacity for students. So their program also included bike education, bike storage, some police staffing just to keep an eye on things, and some incentive items. And as you can see in this photo, Portland Public Schools had several great bike education events. All right, so how do you apply for a mini grant application? So here I am going to actually share a different screen on my computer where I can show you the application steps. So this is our mini grant webpage. Some of you may already be familiar with this. It has all of the information you'll need for our mini grant when it's open, when it closes. And we will also be posting the recording of this webinar to the website as well. So you'll want to scroll down here and you'll just fill out this top section, which is the intent to apply form. And if you don't want to go ahead and fill out your whole application yet, which is totally understandable, then you should fill out the intent to apply. So you'll click this submit button down here. And that will just indicate to us that you are interested in applying for the mini grant and let us know that we should follow up with you and send you any materials that may help you to apply for the mini grant. So you will be included in future mini grant communications from us. And then for the actual application itself, you'll want to download and fill out these documents. So we have instructions for how to fill them out, our request for proposals, which is the main application form, as well as a signature form. This is a signature for your school principals and school superintendent, district superintendent. Because you will need to, if you're not with a school, you will need to communicate with the principals and superintendent and get their approval before applying. And then we do have a budget document where you'll lay out your estimated budget. And then we do also have another attachment if you have multiple schools that you're applying with, which actually is what we do recommend. We do recommend a district-wide approach so that you can get really the most bang for your buck, particularly with staffing. So you'll just upload all of those documents. Please do not upload zip files, just the documents. and then you'll just click submit right here. And if you do have any questions when you're filling out the application or need technical assistance, please feel free to reach out to me. And then just as a reminder, the due date is Friday, March 6th, so you have plenty of time um, to contact me with any questions that you might have. Here's all of my contact information. I'll also be sending out a follow-up email to registrants for this webinar. And so you'll be able to reply to that email and communicate with me that way as well. We do also have other team members that you can contact. Our director, Colleen Sink, who is our amazing technical assistant on this call, and Megan Seuss, who is our newest member to join us as well. So that is the end of this webinar portion.